because we have plenty more opportunities to catch in with this Regulation E metagame coming up at the Latin American International Championships and beyond. But let's go ahead and tune into our top 4 matchup here. This is RAGHAV MALAVIYA, no stranger to the top 4 stage, getting top 4 at the Oceania International Championships twice, being a finalist at the North American International Championships last season, and winning the Anaheim Regional Championships all the way back in 2019.
RAGHAV running a team, once again, of the Urshifu Rapid Strike, that Choice Scarf set with the defensive Poison-type Terastallization, the Regidrago with the Dragon Fang, Citrus Berry, Hisuian Arcanine, the Rocky Helmet Tornadus Incarnate, the Assault Vest Rillaboom, and the Metal Coat Golden Go. This is, again, the second Golden Go in a row on stream we've had after Jamie's with the offensive item and Nasty Plot. The Metal Coat this time, though, allows it to be a little bit more bulky because you're not taking that 10% recoil every time you're attacking, and it gives you a more, kind of a slower play style, especially with that Dragon Terra, to compare to Jamie's Steel that we saw in that last round. The Rillaboom, I think high horsepower is a kind of important move on Rillaboom and a lot of the time. Sometimes you have to choose what you're giving up, like Woodhammer, Grassy Glide, and U-Turn are also all very good, and to run high horsepower you have to drop one of those. In this case, RAGHAV is not running U-Turn, which I think makes sense. If you're running the Terra Grass Rillaboom, that's more of an offensive set, and you want to probably have access to both the Woodhammer and the Grassy Glide.
Yeah, a lot of times in this metagame as well, U-Turn is better off on faster Pokemon, and Rillaboom cannot match the speed of something like an Urshifu Rapid Strike. Chuppa, his opponent in this top 4 match, getting second at the San Diego Regional Championships last year, top 8 at both the North American and the Oceania International Championships last season, second place at the Dallas Regional Championships in 2018, really looking to break through that finalist title to earn the title of champion. And his team may look very familiar to you. It's because it's almost virtually identical in terms of moves, held items, and Terra typing to the team that won the Lille Regional in the previous weekend. That is Chien-Pao, Rillaboom, Arcanine, Urshifu, Tornadus, and Fluttermane. I
think at this point, Chuppa's probably like a consensus for one of the best North American players that has not yet won a regional championship. And so that's something he is certainly looking to break through with here. I think there's no question that he's capable of it. Like, he's shown multiple times. He's reached multiple finals, reached multiple like top 8s at internationals, which is arguably even harder than winning a regional sometimes. And so there's no question as to whether it can happen. But RAGHAV, unfortunately, will be trying to stand in Chuppa's way. It's going to be interesting to see how these teams match up too, because if you're RAGHAV, you're running something a little bit more unique, and Chuppa is running something that's become pretty standard. Like, these 6 Pokemon find themselves, in that top 12 pretty frequently, and like you said, Gabby, it did also win a regional just 1 week ago. So it's probably something RAGHAV at least practiced against or kept in mind when team building, and it means that RAGHAV may be a little bit more prepared going into this matchup.
Yeah, one thing I also want to call out is that I was talking to Chuppa a little bit earlier, and I believe he played one of RAGHAV's friends running the same exact 6 during the rounds of Swifts. So he does have a little bit of knowledge of at least how these Pokemon play together. Obviously, there's no way for us to know if those Pokemon were indeed identical in terms of their base stats, or if RAGHAV made some adjustments to fit his play style a little bit better. But I do know that the Regidrago was not brought in that matchup. So something that Chuppa could be anticipating moving forwards. I mean, it's not necessarily the best Pokemon when you're staring down a Chien-Pao and a Fluttermane in particular. But at the other side of things, I mean, RAGHAV has done very well and has brought this Regidrago to situations where I personally would not have committed that Pokemon. So.
I think one thing that Regidrago likes kind of preying off is Fluttermane. It's hard to say Fluttermane going down in usage because it's still like very, very high up there. But there were metagames in the past where Fluttermane was in like the 60s and 70%. And this is very much not that metagame anymore. The Fluttermane is now down to, about half at most, even getting down to like the 30s and 40s in terms of percentage of players using it. And so that's something that Regidrago loves. Like, obviously, Fluttermane is something that is one of the big threats to Regidrago, both offensively and defensively. You can't Dragon Energy the Fluttermane, and a single Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast probably just wipes it off the game, wipes it off the board immediately. So something that might be a little bit tougher for RAGHAV to bring, especially considering, like you said, Gabby, that Focus Sash Chien-Pao is a big issue as well. And the Prankster Tailwind from the Tornadus on Chuppa side can match that from RAGHAV. So the speed advantage and the power advantage, not really necessarily in Regidrago's favor in this matchup, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's also interesting to just look down the team sheet and notice just how similar and how different these teams are at times. For example, Chuppa's Hisuian Arcanine has a Choice Band, Raghav's is holding that Citrus Berry, has access to Will-O-Wisp, which is not a tool that Chuppa has. You see the Rillaboom with the Assault Vest on both teams, but Chuppa did opt to bring U-Turn over that high horsepower like you were alluding to earlier. There's just so many individual little changes in the identical Pokemon across the board for these two trainers that I think is really going to ultimately determine how they approach this matchup. And as we go into game number 1, we spent so much time talking about speed control in the previous set. I feel like it's worth bringing up again in this game 1 situation. Do you think we'll see Tornadus leads on both sides of the field?
I think it's very possible. Speed is something that's really important for both of these teams, and Tailwind is the only speed control unless you count the percentages from Blink Windstorm. And so I could see the Tornadus is leading against each other, and that might make their speed interaction really important, because if we look at the team sheets, Chuppa's has Taunt and Raghav's does not. So if Chuppa's is faster and is able to get a Taunt off before Raghav can Tailwind, that would be pretty disastrous for Raghav, because that means that Chuppa would have the sole speed control in this game.
And we've seen time and time again just how having that one turn of Tailwind advantage, or possibly just the Tailwind advantage in a match, can make or break a battle for these trainers. Raghav is locked into his 4 Pokemon. It looks like Chuppa just locked in as well. So let's go ahead and kick off this incredible top 4 matchup here at the Toronto Regional Championships. This is RAGHAV Malaviyya versus Chuppa Cross, and we'll be kicking things off with leads of Tornadus and Hisuian Arcanine for Chuppa, and Gholdengo and Rillaboom on the field for Raghav.
I kind of like this lead for both trainers. In this case, Raghav has the option to go for something like the Fake Out into Arcanine, which will allow the Gholdengo to create some space for itself and get maybe a big nasty plot off. The Arcanine on Chuppa's end is the Choice Band variant, so there's no option for Protect. There's no option for Will-O-Wisp like you were talking about with Raghav's side earlier, Gabby. So this Gholdengo, which will take very little damage from a possible attack from Tornadus, and also cannot be taunted by the Tornadus thanks to Good as Gold, in a pretty good spot here just for this turn, obviously, because once the Arcanine is free to attack, a Choice Band Flare Blitz will be difficult to handle.
Chuppa could also opt to switch out that Tornadus as well if he is worried about the position of that Pokemon, as typically Hisuian Arcanine are known to be trained on the speedier side of things. If they're holding Choice Band, Fake Out will flinch that Pokemon, and a Bleak Wind Storm will connect with both the Rillaboom and the Gholdengo on Raghav's side of the field. Does get the speed drop on that Rillaboom, but Gholdengo free to go for a nasty plot to boost its special attack sharply.
Special attack goes up 2 stages, and now the Arcanine and the Tornadus on Chuppa's side of the field are vulnerable to just being knocked out by a single Make It Rain, especially because the Arcanine is Choice Band and not trained to be as bulky. The Metal Coat boosted +2 Make It Rain is a huge threat here, especially also considering the potential for the Dragon-type Terrestrialization coming out from this Gholdengo. If it does opt for that, it has the option to dodge the super effective Fire-type damage from Arcanine. You also have the option to go for something like a Protect, scout out what Arcanine locks into, and that can inform whether or not you need to transform your Gholdengo later on in this game.
Yeah, and I think taking one turn to scout out whether or not you need to Terrestrialize is so important, as there are several Pokemon on Raghav's side of the field which would benefit from having a defensive Terrestrialization. The Rillaboom switches out into the Hisuian Arcanine, will intimidate the opposing Hisuian Arcanine on Chuppa's side of the field, and that Gholdengo just scouting out to see what Chuppa's move choice is. Tailwind from that Tornadus will be boosting the speed on Chuppa's side of the field, and Flare Blitz going into the protecting Gholdengo.
That's a nice turn for Raghav. First of all, you get the Tailwind on the field, and you get one turn stalled out already. We saw from the interactions on the prior turn that the Arcanine would have outsped Gholdengo regardless, so that doesn't really change much about the Gholdengo on this current turn. More importantly, by not going for Make It Rain that turn, you're not clearing out the field for 2 swaps for Chuppa on this second turn of Tailwind. And also, since the Arcanine did lock into Flare Blitz, that means Raghav's Arcanine is very safe this turn. Only Flare Blitz and Bleak Wind Storm are the damage options that can come out from Chuppa. And if you opt to go for the Terrestrialization on Gholdengo as well, there's an almost 0% chance anything gets knocked out in this coming turn. So some great damage potential coming out from Raghav right now.
Yeah, taking a very offensive start to the game with that Golden Go nasty plot, and now backing it with a defensive terrestrialization as well. This Golden Go becoming the dragon typing will resist the fire type attacks it would have been very weak to otherwise. Here comes the Flare Blitz from the Arcanine. It is not very effective. Will take a little bit of recoil damage from that attack. Liquid Storm does connect with both the Pokemon on the opposing side of the field and make it rain from the Golden Go. Here it goes. It's just a knockout onto the Arcanine and to the Tornadus.
That is massive damage. The double one-hit KO coming out from the Make It Rain here on Golden Go means that the Golden Go now down to +1 special attack, but still a massive threat. Also seeing that Golden Go is faster than Arcanine, something for Chuppa to keep in mind later on. But the offensive Golden Go now is still a massive threat to anything that might come on the field. But unfortunately for RAGHAV now is down to much lower health. The plus side, though, is obviously you're up 4-2 in Pokemon count. You have the option to control kind of how the rest of this game goes. You've got the Rillaboom in the back. You have the option to bring it back in for some fake-out pressure. You have your Arcanine on the field, which can either stay on, maybe try and break the Focus Sash or something like an Extreme Speed, or switch out, come back in for the Intimidate onto the Chien-Pao and the Urshifu. So a lot of control for RAGHAV right now, especially because the Rapid Strike Urshifu, I know it's not Choice Scarf for Chuppa, so you don't have to lock in anything right now, which is kind of the saving grace there for Chuppa.
Yeah, I really loved how RAGHAV as well went for a Will-O-Wisp on that Arcanine into the Arcanine on Chuppa's side of the field on the off chance that he decided to switch that Pokemon out for later on in the game. We do see the reveal of both the Chien-Pao and the Urshifu Rapid Strike from Chuppa, which meant if either of those targets were burned, that would have been a huge damage reduction during Chuppa's endgame. With the start of this next turn, RAGHAV will swap out his own Arcanine, sending in that Rillaboom once again. Urshifu going for a Protect alongside of the Golden Go. What is this Chien-Pao going to do? It goes for an Icicle Crash, but it does indeed target down that Golden Go, who will not take damage.
It's a bit of a risky Protect in front of that Urshifu. A close combat into that slot surely would have knocked it out. But RAGHAV recognizing that the more likely attack is probably the Surging Strikes into that Arcanine slot, or even less likely the possible Protect from Urshifu. So a Protect that pays off there, and now you get the Rillaboom on the field, you have the Fake Out pressure, and more importantly, you are wasting another turn of Tailwind. So once the Tailwind ends for Chuppa's side, since that Tornadus has been knocked out, the Choice Scarf Urshifu in the back for RAGHAV will be the fastest thing on the field. You also have to wonder whether Chuppa is going to opt to terrestrialize the Arcanine, not the Arcanine, the Chien-Pao or the Urshifu in this game, because if you do opt to terrestrialize the Chien-Pao, you do turn into a Ghost type, which does remove the option for Fake Out. It does remove the option for Extreme Speed later on. We're going to see where it is right here. It's going to be that Chien-Pao.
Yeah, Chien-Pao going to terrestrialize into that Ghost typing, really afraid of the Fake Out potential here from RAGHAV's Rillaboom. Unfortunately, though, it's not a Fake Out, it's a Grassy Glide into the Urshifu, and it barely misses the KO onto that Pokemon. Icicle Crash does find its target in the Golden Go. This time around, will pick up that KO. Urshifu down to its last little bit of health here. It can only target down that Rillaboom, and if it wants to do any damage at all, it's going to have to be the close combat, and it will secure the KO.
Chuppa takes 2 KOs here, but that Grassy Glide is crucial because now the Urshifu is well within range for an Extreme Speed from RAGHAV's Arcanine, and especially considering I believe Tailwind does run out right now for Chuppa, the Choice Scarf Urshifu for RAGHAV will be able to outspeed this Chien-Pao and this Urshifu. So in conjunction with the Extreme Speed, it's going to be really difficult for Chuppa to come back in this game. It looks like Chien-Pao might be able to survive 1 Surging Strikes. I think most of them are trained to be a little bit bulky at least. But even if you just look at the damage options coming out from Chuppa, there's not a whole lot that Chuppa can do to take down this Urshifu on RAGHAV's side. So an expertly navigated Tailwind there from RAGHAV. The Choice Scarf Urshifu only coming onto the field once Tailwind expires means that the Scarf will allow it to be attacking first no matter what.
A tough end game for Chuppa. He's going to have to make a crazy prediction to try and keep himself in the game. Extreme Speed will knock out that Urshifu. It is just the Chien-Pao remaining standing, and it will be the target of the Surging Strikes. But like you were just saying, let's see how much bulk has been invested into this critical Pokemon. After the 3 critical hits, it is indeed not enough to pick up that KO. So that is great confirmation for RAGHAV. Sacred Sword will return a knockout into the Arcanine thanks to a critical hit. But with the Urshifu faster than the Chien-Pao, it can use Sucker Punch to attack, but that's not going to be enough. Unless it gets a crazy critical hit here, it's going for it.
Would have needed like a triple critical hit there, it looks like. It didn't even got the critical hit.
Hey, that Chen Pao tried its best and has no regrets, but unfortunately will be knocked out by a Surging Strikes, and RAGHAV takes game 1 in this top 4 set in Toronto.
Really well played from RAGHAV. That initial golden go, getting the fake out and the nasty plot off on the first turn thanks to its partner Rillaboom, really set up RAGHAV for the remainder of that game, because even though Chuppa had the Chen Pao and the Urshifu in the back, one with the Focus Sash and one with the Water typing to resist Make It Rain, neither of them really wants to swap in on the +2 golden go, and so Chuppa didn't really have much of a choice other than to let the Tornadus and the Arcanine get knocked out by that Make It Rain and hope to win the game with the Chen Pao and the Urshifu in the back. But RAGHAV just had too many tools left at their disposal to do that, especially considering a very well maneuvered like Protect Swap to Rillaboom turn that bought some time with the Urshifu and the Chen Pao on the field, wasted more Tailwind turns, and again, getting that Urshifu on the field after Tailwind ended, which was crucial.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage for RAGHAV too was that initial double one-hit knockout, and I gotta ask why we didn't run the one-hit KO graphic like twice in a row, because that was technically 2 one-hit knockouts. Just throwing it out there.
Maybe the fake out chip
the fake out
contributed a little
ones?
bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I see what you're saying.
But still though, like that's that's like exactly what you're looking for if you're running Nasty Plot Golden Go, right? You get it into a spot where there's like no chance you can get knocked out that turn. You just got off a huge Make It Rain and kind of blow the game wide open, and that's precisely what happened on that third turn of this game.
Yeah, and I think that if Chuppa wants to try and find an advantage in this game number 2, he can't let that Golden Go have the opportunity to go for that early Nasty Plot once again. I think RAGHAV is very comfortable just leading that Pokemon, and it doesn't necessarily matter what Pokemon is alongside of it. You know, fake out support is great. I could also see RAGHAV maybe pivoting to Tornadus if he's worried more about speed control. There's really nothing that Chuppa can do barring targeting it down with a very powerful Flare Blitz, or maybe trying to eventually land a Sucker Punch on it. Assuming that it doesn't Terrastalize, he's going to have a really tough time. The one thing that he could consider adjusting in terms of a Pokemon adjustment is try and force the Terrastalization on the Golden Go into a Dragon type and then have your Flutter Mane in the back.
I was going to say the exact same thing, yeah.
But that is such a tough position to maneuver to.
It is, especially because RAGHAV's team seems to be pretty well equipped for Flutter Mane. It is the Booster Energy special attack set like we saw earlier on in this tournament, which means that it is not the speed boosting. It will be outsped by the Choice Scarf Urshifu. And of course, if the Golden Go does get a Make It Rain off with the Flutter Mane on the field, that is something you have to worry about. The Terra Grass, like Grassy Glide, does a lot of damage. Regidrago is the Steel Terra. Like Flutter Mane is kind of hostile into this team otherwise. And so it's going to be a bit of a risk for that to be the case for Chuppa to bring it. Not seeing it just yet, though. We have the Rillaboom and the Arcanine lead from Chuppa alongside the Tornadus and Arcanine from RAGHAV.
I was going to say, it looks like RAGHAV has taken a page out of Chuppa's book and will be leading the Tornadus this time around, whereas Chuppa decided to lead his own Rillaboom. And that is already a significant adjustment from both these trainers. I
like that too, especially because the Rillaboom on Chuppa's side does not have high horsepower. That makes this a pretty safe Arcanine lead for RAGHAV. You get the Intimidate down onto Chuppa's Choice Band Arcanine, which is really important. And you have the option to go for some Blake Windstorms right off the bat, try and damage that Grass-type Rillaboom, or save your Tailwind for later on.
Well, here's another adjustment from RAGHAV. He's going for a turn 1 Terrastalization, but there's no Golden Go in sight. Instead, opting to turn his Tornadus into that Ghost type, so there is no threat of Fake Out or even an extreme speed from the Hisuian Arcanine. But no Fake Out, no flinch. It's just Rock Slide from that Hisuian Arcanine, naturally outspeeding all of the Pokemon on RAGHAV's side of the field.
Oh no!
And actually does get the flinch into the Tornadus. That was a Bleak Windstorm dodged and would have been critical, as the Rillaboom probably would have been KO'd by the follow-up Flare Blitz. Instead, will have the opportunity to U-turn out and give Chuppa the opportunity to switch in a Pokemon without taking any damage from that turn.
A bit of an unlucky break there. Again, we saw it was trying to go for that Bleak Windstorm as there was no priority Tailwind. And that probably would have been able to KO that Rillaboom in conjunction with Flare Blitz. Lucky enough for RAGHAV, the Flare Blitz does still go off, so Rillaboom takes a big chunk of damage before it turns out. And we do still have the option for a Tailwind to come out from this Tornadus later on. The defensive Terrastalization there meant that, one, you couldn't be faked out if that's what Chuppa was trying to go for with the Rillaboom. But two, and possibly more importantly, the Tornadus did not take super effective damage from that Rock Slide. So even though it did get flinched, I believe it did a little bit under half of its HP, so it should still be able to take one more Rock Slide if it needs to.
And another adjustment, it is Flutter Mane from Chuppa taking the field now, activating that booster energy to boost its special attack by 1 stage, but with no speed control in sight. I cannot help but wonder if we see this Arcanine try and go for a big attack into that Flutter Mane.
That's true. The Flutter Mane, even though the Arcanine on Raghav's side is not the offensive item, it is at -1 attack. Something like a Tailwind and a Flare Blitz into that slot would still deal a lot of damage. Flutter Mane known to have, let's be honest, pretty poor defense. It's not the greatest. It's pretty low, not compared to its like speed or special attack. But the Arcanine on Chuppa's side really wants no business on this field anymore.
Yeah, does not want to stick around with the threat of an Intimidate, and Raghav honestly feels the same way, going to swap out his own Arcanine, also for a Rillaboom. So now these two Grass-type starter Pokemon are staring each other down on the field. Flutter Mane does have the opportunity to attack, but it opted for a Shadow Ball into the protecting Tornadus.
I like that. The Shadow Ball into the Tornadus means that you're guaranteed a lot of damage to that slot, if not a clean KO thanks to the Rock Slide chip. And the Arcanine on Raghav's side would have been knocked out by 1 more Rock Slide if it had stayed on the field. So switching out the Arcanine there to make sure preserving Intimidate makes sense. Chuppa trying to punish that play, going for the Tornadus instead. However, the Tornadus protecting means it sticks around this turn. We have some fake outs possible from both these Rillobooms on the field, but more importantly, the Flutter Mane and the Tornadus cannot be faked out as they are Ghost types. So it's going to be a matter of how these Rillobooms interact with the rest of the field on this turn.
It's also important to note that with the Assault Vest on both of these Rillaboom as well, it is very unlikely that they'll be taken out with 1 hit. Rain Dance, a curious move from Raghav, will eventually boost the attack of any water-type attackers. Could have also made Bleak Wind Storm a little bit more accurate, but that Tornadus will just be KO'd by a Shadow Ball instead.
I like the Rain Dance. It sets up the Urshifu in the back for Raghav. It does kind of give away that you have Urshifu, so like even though Chuppa hasn't seen it yet, like there's no reason to use the Rain Dance there unless the Urshifu is there. And that means that the Surging Strikes coming out from this Urshifu will be even more threatening, especially into this Flutter Mane, which can possibly be trained to survive Surging Strikes from Urshifu, but certainly not in the rain.
You also have to wonder as well, with grassy terrain still active and with the Choice Scarf on that Urshifu, you can't necessarily go for the Surging Strikes unless you're confident you can take a Grassy Glide unintimidated from the opposing Rillaboom.
Exactly. That's why the Arcanine in the back for Raghav might be a big deal here, because it does have the option to intimidate this Rillaboom, make sure the 1-hit Grassy Glide is not able to KO it. And it also gives you kind of the opportunity to go for something like a U-turn, which might just be enough damage to KO the Rillaboom for Chuppa.
We will have to see as the Hisuian Arcanine is sent out onto the field by Raghav to intimidate the opposing Rillaboom. U-turn, no Grassy Glide, will just pick up that KO on Rillaboom outright. Will also give Raghav the opportunity to switch his own Rillaboom back out onto the field, presumably to take a Moonblast or possibly a Shadow Ball from this Flutter Mane, depending on which Pokemon it targeted down. It is indeed that Moonblast into the Rillaboom, and even with the Assault Vest, it just does so much damage thanks to the booster energy.
That's a really cool play from Raghav. I love that maneuvering because switching the Rillaboom out means that you have it available to switch back in for that Urshifu when it U-turns and make it take the Moonblast in its place. Doesn't take it very comfortably, but it is holding that Assault Vest, so it is the one thing left that kind of wants to be taking it the most. The Arcanine, even if it switches in on that Moonblast at low health, thanks to the booster energy, may even be knocked out because of that Rock Slide chip damage from earlier on in the game. But the Arcanine switch allows the Urshifu to survive a Grassy Glide if that was what Chuppa had gone for, and also, again, allows you to reposition that Rillaboom. This Urshifu on Raghav's side now is very well poised. We can see that Chuppa does not have the Tornadus. There's no chance for any kind of Tailwind. So this Choice Scarf Urshifu in the rain will be a massive bit of damage dealing from Raghav on this side, especially considering the Arcanine obviously will just be knocked out by it as Surging Strikes in the rain. Maybe in just a 1-hit KO, the one hit from Surging Strikes. But more importantly, this Flutter Mane does not have the option to protect itself against Surging Strikes and will be knocked out in one set of hits.
Yeah, now the mind games begin though, as Urshifu is revealed to be Chuppa's final Pokemon. His own Urshifu is in a very similar position to Raghav's, except for the fact that it does no Protect. RAGHAV will switch out his Hisuian Arcanine for his own Urshifu this turn. I think wanting to ensure that it can intimidate the opposing Urshifu, and Chuppa does indeed use Protect this turn. Fake out from Rillaboom, no Grassy Glide here, will not connect with that Pokemon, and Flutter Mane, this Moonblast is so critical, goes into the Rillaboom, but misses the KO!
Misses the KO. Rillaboom will have the chance to get some grassy terrain recovery, but I believe the Urshifu on Chuppa's side is running Aqua Jet, which would allow it to potentially act before the Rillaboom, and thanks to the rain that RAGHAV set up themselves, might be enough for the KO there, which would mean that no Grassy Glide comes out before the Urshifu can attack. That means that the Urshifu gets his Aqua Jet off. Oh, it's not even a terrain anymore. So yeah, there's no chance for a priority Grassy Glide anymore. But more importantly, this Urshifu on RAGHAV's side is still the fastest thing on the field. So you really just can't ignore it anymore. That's a very risky switch for that Urshifu, because if a Dazzling Gleam comes out, that might just KO it outright, if not take it very weak and in range for something like an Extreme Speed. But RAGHAV calling that correctly, Rillaboom hanging on and able to threaten some more damage with these Grassy Glides later on in the game.
Will return later on with the grassy terrain alongside of it. Instead, it is a revolving door of Pokemon for RAGHAV, with the Arcanine taking the field once again. Surging Strikes targets down that Flutter Mane, but thanks to the rain boost, will indeed do enough damage to knock it out in a single move. That was technically a 3-hit KO, but I'll allow it this time.
The discourse continues.
The discourse continues. The Urshifu on Chuppa's side of the field did also go for a Surging Strikes, but did not target down the Rillaboom. Instead, will be targeting down the Urshifu on RAGHAV's side of the field. And again, thanks to the boost from the rain, is going to put it into a 2-attack knockout range at this point in time. But with Chuppa having the Pokemon disadvantage at this point in time, with only that Choice Band Arcanine remaining, this is certainly a very tough position to be in, as RAGHAV's own Urshifu is guaranteed to outspeed that Arcanine and pick up the knockout, unless we start seeing some terrestrializations here.
You also have to wonder if Extreme Speed and Aqua Jet from Chuppa's Arcanine and Urshifu are enough to KO this Urshifu themselves. That Surging Strikes into that slot is really important, because without that, Urshifu is probably at much greater health, and if you do up for close combat, that means you're lowering the own defense of your own Urshifu. So I really like that play from Chuppa there. Get the Urshifu as low as you can, and potentially hope for some kind of miracle here where you're able to attack this Urshifu once again to clean out this Arcanine. Because if Urshifu doesn't have that chance to fire Surging Strikes off into Chuppa's Arcanine, it's going to be really difficult for RAGHAV to take it down.
There is finally a terrestrialization in play from Chuppa, and it's going to be the Hisuian Arcanine giving up its fire typing and opting to terrestrialize into a normal type Pokemon. This could be an indication of the attack that Chuppa has locked into for the remainder of this game. Extreme Speed is enough to pick up the KO onto RAGHAV's own Urshifu. And now that that Pokemon is out of the way, Urshifu following it up with an Aqua Jet into the opposing Arcanine for a subsequent KO.
That's really smart. The Extreme Speed having higher priority than the Aqua Jet means that in any scenario, if the Urshifu stays in there or if the Rillaboom swaps in there, the Aqua Jet goes into the other slot. Extreme Speed picks up that KO, especially with the Terra Normal boost, and then Aqua Jet's redirected towards that Arcanine, or even the Rillaboom if it switches into that slot. That's just 2 guaranteed KOs there if you're Chuppa, so really smart turn there. In a game that looked like it could be going pretty well in RAGHAV's favor from the start, was actually turned around very well by Chuppa, just because RAGHAV, set up that rain, which did help with the KO into the Flutter Mane, but at the same time, maybe kind of spelled his own demise, as the Surging Strikes damage into his own Urshifu from Chuppa's was just too much.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that Extreme Speed was boosted by the terrestrialization in addition to the extra damage from the rain, so it's tough to say just where exactly that knockout would have landed.
Right.
But I do agree that knowing the Urshifu was down to about half its health did make the KO from the Arcanine possible, and again, opened up the game for Chuppa to tie up the score and bring us into a Game 3 during this top 4. We saw Chuppa make a very interesting adaptation there, bringing the Flutter Mane to try and pick up some KOs against a Dragon-type Goldengo. Instead, was able to find a KO against the Ghost-type Tornadus very early on in the game, but that was not enough to put Chuppa in the driver's seat. This game was really back and forth, knockout after knockout, and it really wasn't until we had the double priority moves on Chuppa's side of the field that I think you could feel like he comfortably was in the driver's seat of that game.
It's so back. It was so back and forth too. I really like the Flutter Mane adjustment there from Chuppa. Not exactly the use we thought it would be. Maybe possibly forcing some damage into the Golden Go after it terastallizes. Golden Go not even showing up this game, but Tornadus and immediately turning itself into a Ghost type. It meant that the Shadow Ball there was a big threat. I think Tornadus usually survives any kind of attack from Flutter Mane, but unfortunately turned into the Ghost weak Ghost type, allowed Shadow Ball to pick it off, which meant that the Tornadus, which was another mix-up from RAGHAV in this game, I don't believe we saw it game 1, was enough for the KO there. So a lot of thinking these players both have to do. Again, they're both very experienced, very capable of moving on from this second game into a third game. And it's going to be really cool to see what they opt to do. It was kind of surprising to see the Golden Go not come at all from RAGHAV just because it was so important in that first game. But if you do look at the Pokemon Chuppa brought, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. The Urshifu is there to resist the Make It Rain and threaten some big damage. The Arcanine is there to threaten with Flare Blitz. And like you said, Gabby, it covers with the Terastallization with the Flutter Mane as well. So a lot of options here for either player.
A lot of options for either player, and it does bring, I think, one of the more significant mind games of this top 4 into light. Do you bring the Golden Go again? It worked out so well in game number 1. You didn't bring it in game number 2. And yes, you could have won in a couple of those positions depending on how things went. Without it, you just struggled to find damage. And if we're talking leads, we're not going to see any Golden Go just yet. Instead, 2 Tornaduses on the field, but the Flutter Mane and the Urshifu is on the field alongside of them. And I think this is the first time we're seeing these Tornaduses on the field at the same time to see who's faster. It
is, yeah, that could be very important. If RAGHAV gets caught trying to go for Tailwind while Chuppa is faster and taunts it, that could be pretty disastrous. However, the Poison type Terra from this Urshifu actually might be coming in very handy right off the bat, especially if the Tornadus and Flutter Mane opt to go for offense right away. The Poison will allow it to resist any Fairy type attacks from Flutter Mane and be neutral to that Bleak Windstorm from Tornadus. So defensive typing on the Urshifu we don't see too often, mostly players opting for that Water type for extra power. That might be a big difference maker here on this first turn, and we're seeing it right away.
Yeah, that was an easy lock-in for RAGHAV, knowing how critical the Choice Scarf Urshifu has been throughout this set and the tournament. Going for a turn 1 defensive terastallization to protect that Pokemon. Chuppa will take this opportunity to set up a Tailwind, ensuring the Flutter Mane is faster, but RAGHAV's own Tornadus sets up Rain Dance. And we saw how much damage the Urshifu does with that boost. The Moonblast into the Tornadus. Here comes those Surging Strikes, and that is in 1 attack knockout once again onto the Flutter Mane.
Big turn for RAGHAV. I like that play a lot, just because getting the Rain Dance off immediately means that you're threatening so much damage right off the bat. It means that even if, a taunt comes through, that means you're not really failing a Tailwind. It's not a huge impact there if taunt acts first and taunts the Tornadus on RAGHAV's side. But more importantly, Tailwind not going up for either player. That's kidding. It went up for Chuppa's side. The taunt not happening, Rain Dance coming through, the boosted damage coming right off the bat, and this Urshifu on RAGHAV's side is very well poised because we can see the 4th Pokemon for Chuppa is that Rillaboom. And you really want your Urshifu to not be taking that super effective Grassy Glide, that priority move, even if the Tailwind isn't up. So a really smart terastallization there, which didn't matter damage-wise on this turn, but sets up Urshifu to make it even easier to swap in on some Pokemon later on in this game.
I was going to say, this is such a tough position for RAGHAV to be in, because on the one hand, you probably want to try and set up your own Tailwind just so that you have that naturally and eventually the advantage later on in the game. But Chuppa could easily go for a taunt into that slot, or he could just go straight for damage. It really depends on what Pokemon he has in the back and what kind of endgame he's trying to set up for. RAGHAV does indeed swap out his own Urshifu though, and reveals he brought the Rillaboom once again into this game number 3. We'll take a quick moment here to set up that grassy terrain, but I think more importantly, we get the reveal of Chuppa's terastallization. It's either going to be the Tornadus or the Urshifu, and he's going all in on offense on that Urshifu, terastallizing it into the Water type. So not only will its attacks be boosted by the rain, it's also going to have the terastallization boost as well. Here comes the Tailwind from the opposing Tornadus. No taunt here. Bleak Windstorm, no accuracy check in the rain, does over half of the health damage to the Rillaboom. I think we're going to see Surging Strikes into the Rillaboom now. And with the 3 hits, the 3 critical hits, with the rain,
that should be enough.
With the terastallization, it's going to be close. It looks like it's going to be enough, and with a high damage roll in the middle there, that is a knockout onto the Rillaboom. What a great turn for Chuppa.
I love that Bleak Wind Storm. I think there's a scenario where you try and bait yourself into a taunt there, just to try and make sure Tailwind doesn't go up, but at the same time, like, you have the Urshifu with the potential for the water terrestrialization. It has the Mystic Water item as well to even further boost those water type attacks. So Chuppa once again making Raghav pay for his own rain dance. It's going to be like nice here, I guess, for the Urshifu on Raghav's side, but at the same time, it's no longer a water type, and it doesn't have the option to resist that Surging Strike's damage anymore, and again cannot protect itself thanks to that Choice Scarf. So the Urshifu on Chuppa's end is very well poised here. Something like a Water Terra, Mystic Water, Rain boosted Surging Strikes, I believe, should KO either of the Pokemon on Raghav's side of the field. So it's going to be difficult for Raghav to protect his own Pokemon from that Surging Strikes.
You don't even have to worry about the Intimidate because thanks to the critical hits, it's not a factor in the damage calculation. The only option Raghav has if he wants to decrease the damage that Urshifu is doing at this point in time would be to hope that it doesn't click Surging Strikes or to try and land a burn. We do see the Surging Strikes first from Raghav's Choice Scarf Urshifu. It's going to be taking recoil damage from the Rocky Helmet on this Tornadus, so even though it should be able to pick up the KO here after the third attack, it will be at almost half of its own health for the trouble. This could mean that Chuppa gets a KO on it this turn, or the Arcanine. It's really his choice here. And with another Surging Strikes targeting down that Urshifu, it doesn't even need 3 of those hits to lock in the KO.
It's difficult to imagine Chuppa doing anything else in that turn. The only thing that could possibly damage the Urshifu on Chuppa's end is Raghav's own Urshifu, and knowing that the Tornadus is also a threat, like, you kind of have to go for it at some point. Our Urshifu avoiding the Will-O-Wisp just for adding insult to injury there, but at this point, the burn really wouldn't have mattered. Raghav is down to just this Arcanine remaining, which means that even a burned Surging Strikes in the rain with the Terra Water, with the Mystic Water, should have been enough for the KO, which means Chuppa is moving on to the finals here in Toronto, hoping to finally close that gap between the finals and the championship.
It's all smiles from both these trainers, though, as they've played in the past and that they will surely play again in the future.